Welcome to Veterans AZ, conversations that celebrate Arizona's veterans and offer insight into their accomplishments. This episode is a conversation with Jason Duren and Jim Pomosh, Marine combat veterans from different eras who have developed a unique friendship. Recorded on location at Cider Corps, the unique business that Jason opened in downtown Mesa with his brother Josh. After you enjoy this episode, be sure to pay them a visit. I'm joined here today by Jason Duren and Jim Pomosh, Marine veterans from two different eras who have developed a special friendship and a working relationship. So gentlemen, thanks very much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Happy to do it. So Jason, I'd like to start with you. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself, your background, and your military service?
Sure. Yeah, I joined the Marine Corps in 2009. I served for 5 years and one tour to Afghanistan where I sustained 2 traumatic brain injuries, and so ended up medically retiring, and that was kind of the beginning of what Cider Corps is.
Where did you grow up and what made you join the Marines?
So I grew up in Kansas. I lived there till I was out of high school, and then shortly after that moved out here as a pole vaulter. And then I had scholarship for school, so I was went through school, did that whole thing, and I actually didn't join the Marine Corps until I was in my early 24. So I joined a little bit later. I think it was just that sense of wanting to serve, and 9/11 happened when I was in junior in high school, so. Every year it was like that sense of wanting to serve and do something and give back to the community was heightened, and eventually just kind of made that jump. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. And so went and enlisted, and that was that.
And so you were seriously wounded and then medically retired. So what was your plan after that, or did you have a plan? It sounds like something that came on quickly and certainly you really wouldn't be ready for.
Right, so I actually finished a degree in fire science and emergency management so I could be a firefighter right before deploying. So I thought that when I got back I would be kind of, ending my time in the Marine Corps and moving on to other ways of being a servant in the community. And obviously I had 2 traumatic brain injuries 5 days apart. I was in speech therapy for 2 years once I got back, and was dealing with a lot of other issues. And so, it took 2 years to medically retire. Once I finished, I decided that I couldn't serve in that capacity anymore. So I just went back, used the yellow ribbon, the GI Bill, and went back and studied sustainable horticulture, and kind of found a new purpose with plants. And at the time, my brother and I started making cider in the garage while I was still in the military, retiring. They wanted to have me doing a hobby, and so we started making cider in the garage, and it kind of hit all those checkpoints. And obviously you start talking to the doctors about it, and they're like, well, alcohol is probably not the best thing, but it hit all those other check boxes of processing and taking notes and tasting and going back and making adjustments. And so it kind of dove right into it. And when I was in school, I was able to do a lot of our projects based around since it's horticulture and plants and the sciences that backed what I was doing. So I was able to take a biochemistry of yeast for fermentation and do projects based around the trees and the apples and the sugars. And so it really kind of helped us hone in on what we were doing from a scientific level. And then that just kind of grew into what Cider Corps is today.
And so was opening a business always the plan, or did it just sort of evolve?
No, it wasn't. It was not a plan at all. It got to the point, just like a lot of other people, where you start sharing it with your friends, and it took a year before we actually liked what we were making. Sharing with friends, and just through a relationship, friend of a friend of a friend, we met with the beverage director for a large restaurant group here in Arizona, and he was like, cool, can I buy this? This is some of the best cider I've ever had. And we were like, oh, wow, okay. And then, on the drive home from there, Josh and I were talking. It was like, man, this could be something. We should give it a try, because like I was saying, after coming back and dealing with some of the issues I was dealing with, I lost a lot of the purpose. Like, my purpose in the Marine Corps, my purpose in wanting to be a firefighter, being a servant, and it's a really hard thing to deal with. And I had a baby girl, and our first baby girl, and feeling like everything that I'd worked for to be successful, to provide for them, was kind of stripped away. And you have to start over and start from scratch. And I think when that happened, it was just like a light bulb popped on of like, okay, here we go. Like I can do this. I'm a hard worker, so we just got to push through. And we're 4.5 years into it now, and that's kind of like that new purpose as far as like my own being.
And so in opening your business, that's how you ended up first meeting Jim, right?
Right. Yeah. So Veterans Day 2017 is when we opened up. I was here still finishing up like some finishing touches, and Josh was out handing out some cards about who we were to the Veterans Day parade. And Jim and Lee had already, they knew about us, and I guess she was like, we need to go down there, check this out. And Jim was like, all right. So they came down, checked out the place. He came up and introduced himself, and it was just one of those like instant connections. And him and Lee are very involved in so many things. And now that I've gotten to know them, know how much they're involved with and how many people that lives they impact. And you just know when you meet him and Lee that it's somebody who you want to be involved with, And that's kind of turned into a therapeutic relationship in itself. Traumas that we have both had in completely different times, and how we've connected through hardship, and just like being able for me to see another veteran who's 40 years older have gone through these things, and the mentorship that he can speak into it for how I need to interact with my community. Not that the community is different, but our age groups are so different that it's really given us an opportunity to say that doesn't matter. Like we can be buddies, we can be best friends, and the age doesn't matter. Our experiences are much alike, and there's so much that we can learn from each other and speak new truths into. And that there's even though like how he came home, like how Vietnam era came home is a lot different than the way that we came home. That there's still a wild community out there that loves and supports all of us.
So maybe Jim, you can talk a little bit more about you were wounded in Vietnam as a Marine infantryman, and now you're involved with the Military Order of the Purple Heart, which is another bond that the two of you share, that Purple Heart. Can you talk a little bit more about that organization and the bond among Purple Heart recipients?
The organization basically has the same goals that the other military organizations have. We want to help our community. We want to help other veterans. We want to help the younger people. We like to promote the military as much as we can and support it.
Jason, were you involved with any veterans organizations before you met Jim?
I was not, no. So the Military Order of Purple Heart's the first one that I really got involved with. And, again, Jim just being who he is really kind of even mentored me through that and bringing me up and getting me into leadership positions within our chapter. And, again, like another testament to kind of that older generation that when they see potential, are going to push you to become everything that they believe you can be. And again, I think that's like a really cool aspect of the military in general. Is not that everybody in the military is good people, but the good ones that come together can move mountains because we've been through some pretty gnarly histories, and so kind of gives you a little bit of bearing and I don't know, like intestinal fortitude to push through hardships that would crush a lot of people, you know.
And that goes back to the, you used the word service a few times in talking about, I think, some of your values. So I think private business sometimes gets probably an undeserved reputation, or some private businesses, is really only being in it for the bottom line, or you're really only in it for the business. But that doesn't really seem to be your approach.
No, you know, obviously those things matter, but I think definitely one of the things that we have learned that I do take from the military and apply with the military of the Purple Heart and business Cider Corps is there's a lot of the community and personal connections and personal relationships matter just as much as the bottom line. And you know, as like we went through the pandemic and everything's crazy, you have a whole group of people that surrounded us, and you know, we started doing deliveries. We kept all of our employees and just had them in new roles doing different things. We got a canning line so we could can, and then we had guys that were driving to people's houses, and so adapt and overcome. But then knowing that we have built those personal relationships in the tap room and the people who supported us, they continue to support us through that. And I mean, we were able to push through we've increased our revenue in that first year. And so, and then as we had little dips and stuff, people still show up and support us. So
Well, you survived the pandemic.
yeah, which is, you know, we went into it just coming out of year 2. So it's incredible. And that you can only really attest that to our people, our community that we're building and the platform. And so you know, to tie that even into like the military of the Purple Heart, the groups like that aren't military groups or any other type of group that you could be a part of. It's kind of, it's not as popular as it used to be, and there's not as much coverage on it as there used to be. And so like even for me going in and being the youngest person in our group, I see the importance of like how these guys interact with each other, you know. And every Thursday they meet up and they do donuts and drink coffee together. They meet up and live life together, do lunches and dinners. And you know, I see sometimes as being a small business owner, you start to isolate yourself, and that can be traumatizing, right? You're not understanding what's happening around you. And so the more that I understand that, the more that I want to be a voice and a platform to bring attention back to these organizations, so that when veterans or really anybody needs help, that there's places that they can go that will help you, no matter, even if you weren't a part of the military of the Purple Heart and you came and you were like, you really needed something. Not that like we can take you to the VA or anything like that, but people like Jim that are there are gonna help. They love others, and that's really that is like the new service that we can provide to our communities. It's just love and support.
You're too humble, Jason.
Oh.
Jason, interaction with his employees and business people is huge. He's a very generous, kind, support individual for employees. If you want to grow in this business, in Jason and Josh's Cider Corps, they make it so that you can. Whether it's to help you get more education, give you some more training in a position that you want, work around schedules, work around babysitting. These are the things that mean so much to employees. When we get through with a day of canning, Jason has always taken care of lunch. It's nothing that you ask for, but you know when you're through canning that you're going to have a nice meal.
And you speak from experience because you eventually became an employee here, right?
Yes.
What drove you to that decision?
Well, I was here often. It's not that I was a big drinker, that wasn't it, but I enjoyed coming in and having a hard cider. And the more I came in and visited with Jason, the more I came around. I saw what they were doing here. I got interested in some of it. And finally one day I told Jason, I said, you know what? I want to get involved. I want to do. At first he was reluctant to let me do that. I think he was feeling sorry. He thought maybe I might be too old. Anyway, he did it. And pretty soon I'm working on the canning line and I get to see the rest of the operation. And it's pretty technical.
He would come in and help whether I asked for it or not. So eventually it was like, you got to go on payroll, my man. We got.
Let's go back to the business side. You mentioned that you and your brother, who founded Cider Corps, your babies in business.
Yeah.
Speaking to other veterans who are babies in business or maybe thinking about opening a business, what would you say? Are there any big lessons you've learned that you'd like to share?
Oh man, I think the biggest thing is lead by grace, and even though that is the most taken advantage of characteristic or value or whatever, you just have to continue to go back to that. When you treat people with respect and love and invest into them, they'll invest back into you. And in a time where we hear a lot throughout the industry, people saying it's impossible to hire people, and we don't have any issue with hiring anybody, and it's typically the friends of people who work here, and the crew that we've had for a very long time. And so, when you are trying to portray something to the community, and you're trying to kind of live in that lane, it's important to that's probably the biggest thing, is to make sure that the employees that you have are ones that you love and trust, and that you would do anything for, and they would do the same. Everything else is just kind of it just happens. If you're in a business that is like ours, where it's service related, you can have amazing drinks, and you can have drinks that are subpar, and if you have have built that community where people want to come in here and they feel free to talk and be who they are, then you're going to succeed. So I definitely, it's the people, the community that makes any business strive. You hear about it all the time, even in big businesses, right, where there is no community and they start to crumble and nobody knows what's going on, and there's no trust and no love, and they're not taking care of them. So,
Jason, you lead by example. The amount of work, physical labor, that Jason has put into this building is amazing. I've seen him down here at 10 o'clock at night working, and he's putting up lights, or he's fixing something. So he's not afraid of work. He's got a good mind, and yet he doesn't lord it over anybody.
I think that's another important thing, that whether that comes from just how I grew up or the military, like when you're in a leadership position, like you're never above anybody, and there's nothing that happens at Cider Corps that I shouldn't do, right? Or that I'm above, out of the pay grade, or whatever, however you want to call it. But I think that's important, and I think that goes a long ways with showing people who just start here, like the expectations that I have for myself and that I have for them. And when that's transparent, it's a lot harder to make mistakes for everybody.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of what our clientele is, and I say ours, I feel like I'm part of it. It's a place veterans can come, families can come. It doesn't make any difference who you are. Women can come in, they don't have to worry about problems. So when you have a business like that, you're going to succeed.
We've tried to be really intentional with kind of bridging those gaps, right? Of how other people perceive like what a bar is or what Cider Corps is or like the military aspect of it, and try to really be subtle with that, like what the the honor, courage, and commitment, the core values of the Marine Corps, and really kind of live that way here and provide a place that it's not just military, it's literally, it's all ages, all backgrounds, everybody is welcome, and it's really cool because somebody can come in all the time. Jim and Lee pop in here and they're having a drink or just stopping by and start talking with somebody random that they've never met before, and it's really cool because we get to show people that have known nothing about the military and just have like preconceived notions of who we are, that we're just gun-toting and angry, and that they can come in and be that, show that like we're loving neighbors. And it's really awesome to see. Josh and I talk about it all the time when you walk out and you see this 23-year-old girl and Jim talking, and you're just like, man, it's really cool. You're bridging a huge gap of communities that typically wouldn't be talking, and they are, right? She can have crazy hair and all this stuff, and it's like
And Jim has crazy hair.
and Jim has crazy hair
commonality.
now. But it's like it's in this place, it doesn't matter. Like we're all one, and I think that's a very important thing that Josh and I have recognized, but then are very intentional about continuing to grow.
Well, speaking of growth, what's next for Cider Corps?
As part of like that communal thing, we have had other people who, Mike's Pizza, he had a pizza stand out on the road, and sometimes after work we'd cruise over there during work and grab pizza. I'm like, man, this is awesome. We didn't have any food in here. We'd have food trucks roll up, and again, we were passionate about what we do, and we weren't passionate about food, so we didn't want to be in control of the food. So we had the food trucks, people who were passionate about what they do, and that community building, right? We asked Mike, and they hung out front, and it was great for them. They did it for a couple months, and summer came by, and it's like, man, it's really hot out there. You want to move inside? And yeah, that'd be awesome. So Mike's is ranked in the top 2 pizza makers in the state. He continually wins awards on what he's doing. Kem Hawk in Eugenia, they own Pear Cup Works. It's an elevated coffee concept, and he was kind of starting out, said, man, we carve you out a little section at the end of the bar and see how you do. And he's a nationally known and award winner in roasting, and so part of the idea was like that this space, we're not open in the mornings, and so why not have him fill up the place and start building that community. And it's done awesome for him. It's been great for us. And again, as like 3 companies who are all brand new, getting a lot of exposure because we're all really good at what we do, but we also like are in our own lanes, and that's kind of the thing, right? Find out what you're good at, stick to it, and don't overexert yourself.
Let me ask you, Jim, if someone watching this wants to support the Military Order of the Purple Heart, how can they do that?
Well, they can contact me through an email address, landjpomush@gmail.com, and just let me know that they'd like to be a supporter, or even if they want to be involved with us, or if they want to become a member. Be glad to return their email and get to know them.
But they're also more than welcome to hit us up through any of our social media platforms, and we can put them in contact with Jim or myself.
They can go to our national website. All you have to do is type in Military Order of the Purple Heart, and it'll take you to a website.
Outstanding. Well, really appreciate both of your time. And yeah, definitely encourage everybody to support the Military Order of the Purple Heart and support veteran-owned businesses like Cider Corps.
Well, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you both. Thanks for watching. Find past episodes along with news and resources for Arizona veterans at veteransaz.org.